Summerlin from Chicago, Illinois. Just wanted to give a huge shout out to the Relay for all the love and support they've given my team and I. And make sure you stay tuned for all the latest boxing news.
Welcome to the motherfucking Relay. We're covering today's top boxing news. Ow!
Okay, we'll start with this. We now know who unified minimum weight champion Yokosta Valle of Costa Rica is going to be fighting on the undercard of Regis Prograrius versus Jose Zapata. And you know, I figured because it's a co-main event, they must be planning something big. They're not just going to put Yokosta in there with anybody, and I was right to assume that. Yokosta Valle will be moving up in weight from minimum weight up to light flyweight to take on unified light flyweight champion of Argentina, Evelyn Bermudez, of the Fighting Bermudez sisters, Daniela, Roxana, and Evelyn. This is a big step up in competition for Yokosta Valle and a far cry from the last champion that she fought, newly crowned Vietnamese WBO minimum weight champion, Thi Nguyen. Evelyn Bermudez has all the experience that Thi Nguyen didn't have, and she's naturally bigger and younger than Yokosta. Yokosta, who sports a professional record of 26 wins with 2 losses, no draws, and 9 knockouts, having never been stopped in a professional contest. To unbeaten Daniela Bermudez is 17 wins with no losses and 1 draw, 6 knockouts. She might have less professional knockouts than Yokosta, but make no mistake, Evelyn is the puncher here, the bigger puncher, and the bigger fighter. Evelyn's won 3 of the last 5 fights, 3 of the last 5 contests by way of knockout or technical knockout. Both fighters, both Evelyn and Yokosta, have seen action in the last 12 months. Evelyn fought once, only once last year, but she's already fought 3 times this year, 3 times. This will be her 4th fight this year, so she will be sharp going into this thing. Yokosta Valle, she's fought in the last 12 months too. She was a lot busier last year than Evelyn was. She fought 3 times last year. She's already fought 3 times this year. My previous videos detailing Yokosta Valle's exploits, we talked about the improvements that she's showing as a boxer, the addition of Coach G to her corner, and the effect that it's having, coupled with that activity rate, the schedule she's keeping, fighting as often as she is within a calendar year. It affords her the chance to consistently apply the science, the sweet science. Application. That's why she's getting better. That's why she seems sharper, because she does fight often. She will be the house fighter in this Marv Nation promotion, as she is co-promoted by both Golden Boy Promotions and Marv Nation Promotions. She will have that advantage, and she needs every advantage she can get. She is going to need it. Against Evelyn Bermudez, she will, because Evelyn's a little younger, a little taller, a little longer, punches a little harder. I mean, listen, Yokosta Valle's not exactly the biggest puncher in the minimum weight division. She's not what I would describe as a knockout merchant, even though she does have some knockouts. She's not the strongest puncher in the minimum weight division, far from it. That would be Sinicia Super Bad Estrada. So if she's not the biggest puncher at minimum weight, she certainly won't be the biggest puncher at light flyweight. The edge in power... Yokosta don't get the edge in power. The edge in power has to go to Evelyn, with the edge in speed and combinations going to Yokosta. I do think Yokosta is a bit faster than Evelyn. I also think she exhibits more variety in her shots, more variety in her combinations. Evelyn's a little bit more limited, but you know what else Evelyn is? She's an Argentinian fighter, an Argentinian slugger. They've got a reputation for being some of the most durable fighters around. They don't just give a good punch, they take a great one. I don't think Yokosta Valle can actually hurt Evelyn Bermudez or stop her. The most she can aspire to do is outpoint her, and that could prove difficult because Evelyn's a mid-range to inside pressure fighter that steps into her jab and tries to overwhelm her opponents with volume. Yokosta being the naturally smaller fighter, there are some perils in association with this step up in class, this move upstairs. This is more dangerous than a rematch with a Tina Ruprecht. It actually is, but a big part of the reason I think Yokosta is doing this is because of Tina Ruprecht. Heard that right. I have it on good authority that beyond Sinicia Estrada's upcoming top-ranked debut set to go down on the undercard of Yanni Bekele versus Denzel Bentley later on this month, I have it on good authority that beyond that, the Tina Ruprecht fight, the Tina Ruprecht unification match for Sinicia, it's already situated. Set to go down in the first quarter of next year. If you're wondering, why more wasn't done by the Yokosta Valle people to get Tina Ruprecht in the ring at the most opportune time to get her in the ring when Tina hasn't fought in over a year's time, it's because Tina's already set to be facing Senicia early next year. And Yokosta Valle, she can't hope to get Senicia in the ring because Senicia just left Golden Boy Promotions. If you want to fight with Senicia, it's going to have to happen on the Top Rank side of things. Remember how it all went down? Remember why it all went down? Senicia Estrada wanted more money than Golden Boy was willing to give her. As a result of that, she migrated over to Top Rank. I.e., Golden Boy Promotions can't afford Senicia Estrada, but Top Rank, they can afford Yokosta Valle. So if Yokosta wants a Senicia Estrada fight, she'd have to go to Top Rank, and I don't think she wants to do that. She can't get Tina Ruprecht in the ring. I'm sure she knows that Tina's already booked to face Senicia early next year. So that pretty much closes the door on unification matches at minimum weight. Thus, the most she can do is move up in weight to take on a unified champion. It's ballsy. It is. She might lose that thing, and even if she doesn't, if she wins those titles and she stays up there, she's going to have to vacate the WBO title at minimum weight, at which point Senicia can pick it up. Yokosta Valle might have picked up the WBO title in her last fight, but she could lose it in her next. If she wins, WBO's got a rule. They don't let their champions hold titles at separate weights. They make you choose. So she might lose the Bermudez fight, and if she doesn't, she might lose the WBO title. Or, she might decide to go back down to minimum weight, even if she wins, and leave those two titles up there at like flyweight vacant, having just won them. There's a few ways this could break down. In any event, it's a good fight. It's a really good fight, but it's a dangerous one. Look for this on the undercard of Prograis versus Zapata. We'll talk more about the fight as the fight date approaches. In other news, from a few days ago, per a tweet from Michael Benson, Conor Benn has now confirmed that he's had 2 positive VADA drug tests, but insists he's innocent and believes they may have been from contaminated food or drink. The first was taken July 25th and came back late August. The second was taken September 1st and came back September 23rd.
It's not looking good for Conor, man.
In these banned substance fiascos, I know of no fighter who ever just came clean and said that they were using banned substances in order to gain a competitive edge. I know of no fighter who just came clean and admitted it. Thus, Conor Benn's assertions of innocence sound like anybody else's assertions of innocence in this situation. Conor Benn on his own drug test said trace amounts were found. Tiniest of traces. Only thing I can think of is contamination. Why would I sign up to VADA and then take this? If you Google this substance, it stays in your system for months. Do I look like an idiot?
Conor's asking a rhetorical question.
Why would he sign up for VADA and then take a substance that stays in your system for months? Well, maybe you thought you could beat the test.
Sorry to say for Conor that he ain't the first fighter that got found out. And he's not the first fighter that claimed innocence in this situation. He is one of many fighters.
And this sounds like the dog ate my homework.
That's how these explanations often sound, these claims of innocence in these situations. It sounds like the dog ate my homework.
Which won't suffice. Conor Benn continued by saying that the traces were so low, there was no benefit. I've got the best scientists on this. I am spending a lot of money trying to prove my innocence. I don't want to run away from this or hide. My innocence matters to me, and telling the boxing community at large, telling anyone who will listen, that there were only trace amounts of this substance, clomiphene, that there were only trace amounts found in his system.
Yeah, that sounds good, that they only found a little bit of the drug in your system. It was just a little bit, just a smidge.
That's great, but that particular banned substance, that particular drug is qualifiable, not quantifiable. A drug like clenbuterol, a drug
that's quantifiable, meaning trace amounts of the drug may not necessarily suggest foul play beyond a certain threshold.
There's a threshold, and if the amounts found in a fighter's body exceed that threshold, well, that would suggest foul play. However, that is quantifiable. It has to be quantified. Whereas the banned substance found in Conor Benn's system, that's qualifiable. Meaning any amount, trace amounts or otherwise.
Any amount of this drug, any amount at all, is too much. It's not the kind of substance you're going to find in somebody's body by accident. It don't get there by accident.
Conor Benn can make the argument that only trace amounts, very, very small amounts of this drug were found in his system. So small that at that moment, they couldn't have had any actual benefit.
Well, that depends. When did the drug enter your system?
Because depending on when the drug entered your system, you might have received the benefits from having used it a long time ago. It's Conor Benn's argument that he didn't willfully take a banned substance, but...
That's what everybody says. What we know is that this ain't the kind of substance that just miraculously appears in your body.
It doesn't get there on its own, and it doesn't just pop up by accident. Conor Benn's dispute with the BBBOC is reportedly about confidentiality and who has jurisdiction over his positive VADA drug tests. It's reported that UKAD chiefs want to investigate, though Benn's lawyers are arguing that this is a WBC case.
When it comes to that, he might actually have a leg to stand on because the Voluntary Anti-Doping Association.
It's not their job to announce their findings to the boxing community at large, the fight fans and the pundits. They're only supposed to notify the aforementioned parties, the two teams, Team Usyk and Team Benn.
And somehow it got out that Conor Benn failed 2 tests, one in July and one in September.
Somehow it got out. We don't know how. And the issue here is that the Voluntary Anti-Doping Association doesn't necessarily work in tandem with UKAD and the BBBOC. They don't work alongside them.
In the realm of, doctor-patient confidentiality, shouldn't something like that apply to VADA and their clients? How is it that UKAD and the BBBOC get access to documentation?
That's the argument that they're making, you understand. That neither UKAD and the BBBOC should concern themselves with readings and findings by way of VADA because they don't work in tandem with each other.
That's privileged information that technically they shouldn't even have access to.
Not in their jurisdiction. And so long as Conor Benn passed all of his UKAD tests, UKAD that does work in tandem with the BBBOC, so long as he passed all of those tests, the BBBOC shouldn't concern themselves with any findings by way of VADA. That's the argument that he's making. I don't know how much luck he's going to have with that.
It's tantamount to saying that, listen, you guys work with UKAD, and as far as UKAD tests, I didn't test positive for nothing by way of UKAD.
No, but you did by way of VADA.
Don't you fucking worry about VADA. What goes on between me and VADA is me and VADA's business. You mind your own.
Like I said, I don't know how much luck he's going to have with that argument.
There is a feeling that any readings by way of VADA should be classified as privileged intel, privileged information. This course of action, this defense, isn't going to convince anyone of Conor Benn's innocence, but by way of a technicality, it might absolve him of any culpability by way of the BBBOC. You don't get to use VADA's readings to penalize me because you don't work with VADA, and any readings from VADA are privileged.
Privileged information that you can't use against me. That's essentially the defense. That's essentially what they're trying to say.
There's a feeling that somebody is trying to hang Conor Benn out to dry here. How is it that his readings...
You know who probably leaked this stuff to the BBBOC? It was probably Chris Eubank Sr.
VADA themselves don't publicly announce their findings to the boxing community at large. They notify the two teams, the affected parties. Now, Chris Eubank Jr. being one of the affected parties, his father, he might have found out about it, at which point he leaked that information to the media, blowing the lid on this whole thing to stop the fight from happening, because he was always opposed to it.
What he's been harping about publicly was the catch weight. Maybe he used this positive test as a means to bring the fight to a screeching halt.
Publicly, he might say that Conor's innocent, but clandestinely, he might be the one that leaked this intel.
Because there's only so many places it could have come from.
Only so many people that could have known about it, and he would be one among them. Finally, in men's heavyweight news, per tweet from Michael Benson, Tyson Fury versus Alexander Usyk for the undisputed WBA, WBC, IBF, and WBO heavyweight world titles is reportedly being eyed for March in Saudi Arabia, with talks ongoing between their teams. An encouraging omen, a good sign, and good news at a time when...
Tyson Fury's taking a lot of heat for that Chisora fight.
There are a lot of people that are convinced that You know, that whole fiasco with AJ, that was little more than a publicity stunt, and that's becoming more and more apparent as time progresses.
You calling him out the way you did, it might have had the opposite effect, an adverse effect with a lot of people out there, because now they just think you're full of shit.
Knocking out Derek Chisora isn't going to impress them because they saw you beat that man 2 times already years ago.
And this news about the undisputed heavyweight title fight, this might allay some of the critics, some of their criticisms.
WBO President Paco Vercel has indicated that Joe Joyce, the mandatory challenger by way of the WBO, and his shot at Alexander Usyk is not imminent, as they don't want to stop any unification with Tyson Fury. Also appears WBA mandatory, potentially Daniel Dubois, and IBF's mandatory challenger, Filip Hrgovic, may come before Joe Joyce.
Now, this will require some explanation. That by way of the WBO, no order from them is going to stand in the way of Fury versus Usyk, which is good news also.
They're not going to impede the negotiation process between them by enforcing any mandatories.
And that's good news, but that doesn't necessarily mean that Joe Joyce is in the bottom of the queue, because per a tweet from Dev Sani,
Frank Warren told him that if Tyson Fury comes through Derek Chisora and Alexander Usyk, there are discussions for him to fight Joe Joyce next summer. Joyce will defend his WBO interim title early in 2023.
Do you see what I mean? The WBO's not on the eve of ordering Usyk to fight Joe Joyce. They might not be, but that doesn't mean that Joe is in the bottom of the queue. He is a Queensberry Promotions fighter, after all.
Hypothetically speaking, if Tyson Fury were to win the fight against Alexander Usyk, well, he's with Frank Warren too. You could do a fight between Tyson Fury and Joe Joyce internally. It's an in-house fight.
Yeah, if Tyson were to beat Usyk, he could fight Joe Joyce as a voluntary.
If he wants to, he could. He doesn't have to wait till he's under orders by way of the WBO to do the fight. He can do the fight internally. Frank could bill it as a BT Sport box office fight, a pay-per-view, and I'm sure that that fight would garner more interest than the fight that Tyson Fury is about to have. However,
that's only if he wants to. That succession of fights, Chisora, which would be the easy one, Usyk,
then Joyce, the last two. That's a tough sequence of fights. I think whether or not Tyson Fury would end up fighting Joe Joyce, I think that's contingent upon how the Usyk fight goes, how easy or how difficult it proves to be to beat that guy, if he even does beat that guy.
And is there going to be a rematch clause? Is there going to be a rematch clause incorporated into the contract between Tyson Fury and Alexander Usyk?
Are they going to use one of those, or is it a one-and-done kind of deal? One-and-done kind of situation?
If it is, and Tyson Fury loses, he's out in the cold.
Supposed to be fighting Derek December 3rd, Alexander Usyk at the end of February or the beginning of March, and Joe Joyce at some point in the summer.
That's a nice looking schedule, if they can actually keep it.
Do you trust Tyson Fury to keep that schedule? That he'd go into a Joe Joyce fight immediately after the Alexander Usyk fight? And how do you guys think the Usyk fight is going to play out? How do you think that fight is going to end?
You know one thing, Joe Joyce ain't getting any younger. That guy's 37. He needs that title shot to happen sooner than later.
He does, so maybe they don't incorporate a rematch clause into the contract between Tyson Fury and Alexander Usyk. Maybe they don't because they know Joe's in the queue.
We'll see how it breaks down.